What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Baltimore Ravens rundown. Their search for their new offensive coordinator just changed pretty dramatically after what happened in the National Football League this afternoon. I'll tell you what I'm talking about, why that affects Baltimore coming up on today's show. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. No matter where you are, no matter how you're tuning in, we are grateful that you are tuning in. Make sure if you have not yet to subscribe. And if this is your first time hanging out with us, just know we do this daily. And also know that we're pushing out some brand new Jesse Minter is coming merchandise. We've got t-shirts, we've got hoodies. If you want them both, you get $10 off. Chatsports.com/Minter. These things are flying off the shelf. So make sure to get yours before they're all gone, okay? Because we're getting pretty close to that point, okay? Chatsports.com/Minter. That link is in the comments and description down below. So Joe Brady got hired as the next head coach of the Buffalo Bills. And I get what you're thinking. I get what's going on in your mind right now. You're saying, Joey, is this the Bills breakdown? Because I thought I was watching to hear about the Baltimore Ravens. How does that affect Baltimore? Well, it actually affects them in a pretty massive way. Because we knew that he was a legitimate candidate to be one of their next, or not one of their next, to be their next offensive coordinator. Okay. In fact, I would have said yesterday, and I think I even did say it yesterday, if I had to put my money on someone to be the next OC, I would put my money on Joe Brady because we knew that Baltimore had extreme interest in him. Case in point, the Ravens have their second interview with Jesse Minter on Wednesday night. There have been reports that have indicated Baltimore knew that they were going to hire Jesse Minter to be their next head coach. But they didn't announce it Wednesday night because they had Joe Brady's second interview on Thursday morning. So what they wanted to do was talk to Joe Brady, continue to familiarize themselves with him, continue to get him familiarized with them, with Eric DeCosta, with the organization, with the front office. Because they knew, okay, we're going to hire Minter, but we are very interested in Brady to be at least the offensive coordinator. And so that's why they went through with that interview. And now he's off the table. And now he's gone. And you guys know my opinion, or you at least know I'm a little bit split on opinions. There are some younger offensive minds in this game that I like a little bit more, but I've always thought it was very, very important for Jesse Minter to get a guy on staff in the offensive coordinator role who's called plays in the National Football League before. Let me tell you a little bit more about why I mean that and why I say that, okay? I want you to think about Ben Johnson, right? Ben Johnson, last coaching cycle, was the hot offensive name. Ben Johnson knew he was going to come in and be a head coach. He was also going to call plays, which is what Jesse Minter's going to do just for the defensive side of the football. So think of those two guys as the exact same guy, right? Young, new head coach calling plays for their side of the football. What Ben Johnson did was he said, hey, look, I'm going to go get Declan Doyle from Denver. He's going to be my young offensive coordinator, even though he's not going to call plays. His sole task, his sole responsibility is to, hey, make sure we are ahead of schedule on the game plan so I don't have to do as much on the front end, and you're going to offload those responsibilities from me because I've got the responsibilities of also being a head coach. So that's going to be, the key for whoever Jesse Minter brings in as the defensive coordinator. We still don't know who that is, but I can imagine it's going to be somebody he's worked with in the past, most recently in Los Angeles. But then this is the important part. Because what Ben Johnson then did was he said, okay, I'm going to hire Dennis Allen to be my defensive coordinator. A guy who's had experience as a play caller, both as a defensive coordinator and has also had head coaching experience in the National Football League. Because me as a first-time head coach and a play caller, I don't necessarily want to have to worry a ton about that side of the football. So let me get somebody that's called plays at this league, called plays at this level, and kind of knows how to be a head coach in the sense of the word of that side of the football. That's kind of what I'm thinking would be most beneficial for Jesse Minter on the offensive side of the football. And that's why Joe Brady was always going to be in discussion for that role. Because he's been an offensive play caller at two different places in the National Football League. Now, we're not going to talk about how it went at his first stop in Carolina, but we knew it had gone pretty well in Buffalo over the last couple of years. Now, that is the thing I will add. I don't know if I was too fired up about Joe Brady just in general. In fact, you've heard me talk about him over the last couple of days. If I had to choose one of the two names offensively with offensive coordinator experience in the National Football League. If I had to choose one of those two guys between Joe Brady and Cliff Kingsbury, I probably would have chosen Cliff. Okay, I think Cliff's ceiling is higher. His floor is lower. But Joe Brady, in my opinion, has just really benefit from having a top 3 offensive line in the league, a top 3 quarterback in the league, and a really solid running back in James Cook. Okay? Like, I feel like if you gave Joe Brady and if you gave Cliff Kingsbury average, I think that Cliff would make something better out of it. I think Joe has really, really benefit from having one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL on his roster. There's been too many times where I've just seen Josh Allen go absolute Superman mode for me to say, hey, look, Joe Brady is the 100% sole reason of their success offensively. So that's why it's pretty impactful, because I look at this roster and I look at this next upcoming season and I think, okay, this team has the ability to win a Super Bowl in 2026, even with a first-time head coach. But it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do that if you've got a full staff, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and head coach who are all young, who are all first-timers in that role. Cliff is really the only guy that fits that bill from here on out to be the next OC that has play-calling experience. But is that the best way to go? Or should you go with some of the young guys? More on that in a second. Real quickly, though, I did got to tell you about our awesome sponsor of today's show, our great friends over at Prize Picks. And the big game is almost here. There's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Missing your fantasy team? My league's already over, but keep playing. But with Prize Picks, I don't have to wait until next year's draft to keep playing fantasy. Prize Picks lets you play fantasy football every week, even in the playoffs. Pick your favorite players and win when they hit their projections every week, no draft required. Join millions of users and sign up for America's #1 sports picks app. Prize Picks did something really cool this past weekend. They gave us a max discount for Sam Darnold. All he had to do was throw for half a passing yard. So I made the very smart decision to pair that up with a Matthew Stafford, more than passing yards, and I won big this last weekend. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Link to this promo is in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. So right now, you got Cliff and you got 2 other guys that they've interviewed. Davis Webb, Nate Scheelhaase. Okay? I would have thought by now, I guess that is cause for celebration from QuickTime Player. Shout out to them. I would have thought by now Scheelhaase or Webb would have been announced as head coaches today. I still would put a bet in that Scheelhaase is the guy. That Webb is the guy in Las Vegas. I don't know about Scheelhaase in Cleveland as much. It kind of feels like they're going to go with Jim Schwartz there. But again, it's Cleveland. I don't think they even know what they're going to do. And it's 4 o'clock. It's Tuesday. I would have thought we heard something by now. So right now, those 3 guys are the ones that are on the table. Cliff, Scheelhaase, Webb. Those are 3 guys you've all interviewed, okay? Most recently, Declan Doyle. Last night, the Baltimore Ravens put in a slip to interview him. I feel like of the 3 young names, okay, Webb, Scheelhaase, and Doyle, I believe Doyle is maybe the one I'd be most interested in just because it's either Doyle or Scheelhaase. I'm not super interested in Webb. What I do like about Doyle is he's learned under Peyton. He's learned under Ben Johnson. But what I do like about Scheelhaase is he's had a little bit more experience and he's been in the McVay tree, right? Learning under Sean McVay. And he's had so many head coaching interviews this cycle. It's obvious people see him as a possible head coach. But again, you do have to talk about what are the implications of hiring a guy who's never called plays in the National Football League before, and that's kind of where I bring this all back to. Maybe it's just best to go with Cliff Kingsbury. My opinion changes every hour. In fact, I really don't even know where I stand, okay? I think it'd be more exciting to hire a guy like Scheelhaase or Doyle, but if you want to compete next year, which I think you'll be able to, Cliff might be the way to go. Because, look, when he has a healthy quarterback all season, Since he's been in the NFL, he's only finished in the top 10 offensively. So, I don't know, man. It's a tough debate. That's going to do it for today's show. Appreciate you guys for hanging out with us. We will be back tomorrow. We'll do a morning video. I don't know if it'll be at home or in studio yet. I do know, though, I will be in studio tomorrow. Ice is starting to melt outside. We'll be live tomorrow afternoon, probably a little earlier, so that way I can get on the roads a little earlier coming back. Regardless, hope to see you guys then. Appreciate you guys for hanging out with us this evening.